Home the gold.
He could be too far. No, he's streaking. Oh, what a catch!
Puts a spicy forehand out in front of Naomi Morcilla.
Wu for the win. Team Canada. Darren Wu!
Santos with the layout grab.
Oh, that fantastic grab. The claws of Chaffer.
Canada just became the world champions.
Canada and the rest of this great world. You're listening to the Huckin Eh podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Theo from Toronto, Ontario, now in Kingston, Ontario.
And I'm Danie Proby. I'm currently in Souk, BC, and together we are your coast-to-coast guide to all things Canadian Ultimate. Theo, speaking of baseball, what have you been up to?
I am absolutely fired up right now is all I got to say, because at the time of this recording, playoffs are right around the corner. Your boy is going to one of the games, can't go to all of them because of work. May have sold some of my tickets. Maybe I shouldn't expose myself on the internet here, but yeah, I'm pretty excited for the playoffs. We haven't been there since, well, I guess we were there a couple of years ago, but it's not the same. This is a real playoff, so pretty pumped up. 3 games in a row. We're fired up about it. So I'm just living the dream here, ready to watch some playoff baseball. Sort of moved in here in Kingston, and then on the weekend I got to go see a tournament, which I know you also had a chance to. So I got to see Easterns, which was cool to see many familiar faces. Some people not happy with the rankings. Love that. Say it right to your face. Love it. Was told by a Laval coach that I burned them McGill coach that I burned them because I said at least they didn't lose 15-3. So I did enjoy some banter with the people is all I'm saying. They were like, Theo, you burned us because you said that we still lost. But yeah. That was fun. That was my weekend. You were out in a tournament.
Yes. And so this weekend I was able to watch Westerns or CWUC. So I got to see all the action on Saturday, which was really fun. And right now I am currently doing some sort of like bachelorette type thing with my 2 besties from high school. And yeah, I got to try on wedding dresses today. Theo, maybe I'll give you a little sneak peek later at some of the best top choices and you can decide which dress I'm going to wear.
Yeah, I'll be the one to choose for sure. That
we'll
sounds like a good idea.
We'll get like an audience vote or something. But then we went to a spa where you go into like ice water and then you go into a sauna and then you go into ice water, kind of like that cold, like aversion therapy thing. So feeling a little tired, not going to lie, but I'm excited for this episode. No, tired. Like it kind of feels like you've run a marathon when you do stuff like that. So definitely almost nap time for you, girl, but we have a lot to cover. So before I fall asleep, we have 2 main events. Do you want to break them down for us?
Well, I do, because Div 1 is coming, like, folks. So we're going to paint the picture for you of what teams qualified. And then there's a significant event happening this weekend for those under the age of 24. So we're going to use that time to talk a little bit about tryouts. Maybe for those who are trying out, you get a little extra insight, perhaps. So you got to stay tuned for both main events. We're going to get to that right after the break. This episode is brought to you by Be Ultimate Apparel. Based out of Vancouver, BC, Be Ultimate is climate neutral certified and designs products that are built to perform. I personally love my 2 Be Ultimate Sun hoodies, and I rock them wherever I go. If you want to learn more about Be Ultimate, start your custom team order, or check out any of their ready for purchase collection, you can head over to beultimate.ca.
Hey, this is Kelsey Hayden from Halifax Salty, and I'm a writer for Ultiworld. You're listening to the Huckin Eh podcast, your coast-to-coast guide for all things Canadian Ultimate.
Yeah, so no news today because the news is just like so major that it's a main event. So no news section. We're going to head right into university results. We're going to start at the West Coast, Best Coast. So the thing about this tournament is that on the open side, it was 2 teams battling for 1 bid. And on the women's side, it was 1 team battling for 1 bid. But there were still lots of games and teams that entered this tournament just to be able to play. So I know you're all hyped up about all these B teams, but I'm going to break down what this actually means a little bit, Theo, for you. So On the open side, the very, very first game was the bid game. So the most important game, it was UBC versus UVic. So we're kind of like a little bit unsure of how this would finish, but both you and I agreed we thought UBC would take the bid out of this region, and we were correct. So they ended up besting UVic 12-9 in pool play. UBC ended up defeating the UBC alumni 15-14. And the interesting fact about this alumni team is that none of them ever went to UBC.
Wait, what? So they're not really an alumni team then? What?
No.
Like, who was on this team?
It was like a lot of, oh my gosh, what are they called again? DNA players. We had Gagan Chatha playing, those kinds of players out, like Koji and stuff. So it was fun. So it was actually a really good game for them and very exciting to watch. I got to watch that entire game. I know you love B teams and stuff, but all the alum and B teams here were a little fake on the open side. So UVic A ended up beating UVic B only 13-10. So it might have been UVic B, but there's also like a couple of top community players are playing there. And I think when that game was happening, maybe the coaches played for the B team as well. So it was definitely a lot closer than I think it would have been had it been a traditional A versus B team. We're still working on how to make this hashtag legitimate in VC, but it is what it is.
Then it's not the same, it's just not the same.
Yeah. And then the UBC B team, this is a legit B team. Okay. Like the UBC B team is actually the B team players. And they ended up beating SFU 12-8. SFU is kind of a new team. There's always quite a few, especially male matching players that practice up there, but they never really get their stuff together in order to send teams to tournaments. So it's exciting to see them represented in both divisions. So on the women's side, big shout out to Moist Clips for going 3-0. If you are from BC, you know why they're named this, because last year when these kids played in the VUL, they were Moischief instead of Mischief, and now there are Clips and Mischief, so Moist Clips. It's disgusting. I hate it. I hate the word.
It's an interesting team name, but it doesn't matter about the team name because they did have success. That's what we're really focused on.
Yeah, so they did really well. I think we were most kind of excited to see their matchup versus UVic, and I think it was tied for a while. But then once the Moist Clubs team put a zone on UVic, I think UVic just had enough people that are not that comfortable in zone or newer. Maybe it was their first tournament. The game didn't really matter. No idea. But they couldn't really handle the zone. So they ended up losing 13-7, which is kind of a big margin. Talking to some of the UVic players, they were not super stoked, but that's okay. You have a little note here about the rankings of UVic, which I'll let you get to after. UBCB, a legit B team. I mean, UBCA hasn't had tryouts on the women's side, but this is a lot of the players that are going to be potentially playing on the B team were on this team. And they ended up beating SFU 13-4, which is awesome. So your predictions were pretty good here, right?
Well, for the open, yes, but I predicted UVic was going to get the bid, so clearly I was going to be right regardless. But this Moist Clips team, throwing the little wrench into it, and yeah, this loss might lower you, UVic, in the rankings. Is all I'm going to say. It's tough. You're losing out here. You might have to drop down. So stay tuned for that.
And one of their U20 players that played at this tournament won't be going to nationals, I heard. So that would make it even more of a drop, in my opinion. But it's hard to say. When I was watching them, they look quite good. But who knows? It's hard to know when the West meets up with the East, kind of what the actual difference between the two levels of play are. So I'm excited for nationals. So CPUUC. How do you pronounce that?
Sapak. Come on. Sapak. It's like Sawak and then Sapak.
All right, Sapak. So prairies. We're going to start in the open division. So the first ever Sapak for U of Calgary. Big shout out. We love seeing new schools kind of entering into this space. Anticipated that Manitoba and Alberta would be a close matchup or a good matchup, and it ends up being 15-9 for Manitoba. Winnipeg ends up taking third place, and Manitoba wins in the final over Alberta 15-8. So you and I were pretty hyped up on Manitoba on both sides, and I think that we were rightfully hyped up about these squads. On the women's side, Manitoba women's was a plus 29 score differential, and their closest game was against Winnipeg in pool play 9-7. Regina was out there doing their thing. They're going to end up going to Div 2. We'd love to see that as well. Manitoba wins the final 14-10. Theo, break down your predictions here, because I thought they were like pretty out there and it seemed like you were pretty bang on.
Well, I predicted the final would be 15-10. It's 15-8. I think you predicted 15-9. So come on, give a little. You differ by 1 point. So we do love that. I did predict the plus 25 score diff in pool play, and they exceeded that. So Manitoba, I think you might be holding down a high spot in the rankings. So once again, like you said, though, once the West or the Prairies meets the East, that's when you're really going to see, because the East teams have this connectivity, right? Like the Quebec teams, at least McGill, and the Ontario teams have connectivity, but there's none with the other side. So it's a mystery.
It is a mystery. So let's talk about those high connectivity teams, because it looked dramatic. I was following along on your social media stuff that you were doing, and I wish I could have been there. It would have been sick to watch.
Yeah, first of all, it was super windy, super cold. I did not expect that, so I was not properly dressed. And most people, like, I brought a lawn chair to sit. I did not sit because it was just too cold to do that. So it eventually warmed up where people were wearing t-shirt and shorts, like, during the final and game to go. But in the morning, it's super windy. So we'll talk about the first day, quote unquote shocker, being that Ottawa beat Queens in pool play. I told people that's a matchup to watch, and clearly it was. Queens loses 12-10. Note here, Mac is Theo's fave team. That is true. I had a chance to talk with the coaches during the tournament, and they love it. They love that, like, sometimes we ain't hyping them up. It keeps the players humble, Danie, is all I'm saying. And I honestly think players get more motivated when people say they're not good. What do you think about that?
Yeah, and every time Ultiworld throws shade at traffic, we're always like, we're going to crush this team in finals instead of losing them in finals. So definitely a little bit more motivated. It's good. It's good fuel.
Yeah, I mean, Go was an example. No one predicted Go was going to beat Dig, and they did it. So there you go. In crossover, some notable results. Guelph beats York 8-7, and Toronto beats McGill 9-8. So close results there. Bracket play, like I mentioned, it was windy. No game goes to 15. McMaster wins. McGill defeats Queens 9-7. Didn't get a chance to see the whole game. But, it's a big fall for the team that was seed number 2 there in Queens. So they're kind of falling down, at least in this tournament. Ottawa loses to Guelph. Guelph, get in the semis. Fired up. And Toronto squeaks by Waterloo 8-6. So I know you have a point that we're going to talk about in Toronto, but we're going to keep going the results, and I'll let you share that. So both semis go to Universe Point. Really exciting, honestly. Got a chance to film the McMaster McGill horizontally for the non-boomers out there, so you can watch it on our Instagram. Really cool. And then U of T avoids the scare, defeats Guelph on Universe. So that sets up Toronto McMaster final, in which Toronto wins on Universe, which also is recorded. So you can check all that out. Funnel you to our social media. Interesting note, though, and Danie, you and I may disagree on this, but I really don't like this rule. And our resident fact checker is not going to like me saying this, but I don't like this rule. So basically, Toronto made the final. Because they beat McGill the day prior and Guelph that same day, they were basically guaranteed, and I was talking to a couple of Toronto players, they knew into this game that it was guaranteed they were going to nationals, because regardless of who won that game, and even if they lost to Mac, they had already beaten those two teams previously in McGill and Guelph, so they're going. I'm not a fan of that. I know they played Guelph that same day, but if you look at the game to go, often you have to play maybe not the same team on the same day, but you do have to play the same team if you lost to them in semis. Like, for example, Go lost to Dig in the semis on Saturday and then played them again which I know is, a different day, but I just feel like there should be a chance to play again. I know I'm going to get pushback on it from a certain someone, but that's my thought, Danie. I'll let you share yours.
Yeah, I guess it's hard because you think if there's 2 bids, for example, and you make the finals in a normal tournament, if you make finals, you'd be finishing number 1 and number 2. But when they have these bids and like plays into bids, all of a sudden the schedule changes a lot. And then you end up having kind of these backdoor games where there's some like interesting strategy about how you play finals. If you know you're going to have to play another game again and like, oh, we've already beaten this team. It is hard because in a long tournament, you might be resting players in certain games, and maybe you might lose a game or win a game that ends up mattering for a bid. Like in this circumstance, because Toronto beat these teams earlier, like maybe those teams weren't kind of going all guns a-blazing against Toronto the first time and ended up costing them. So I don't know if that's the case, but some of those types of things could happen. So I could see why there would be some issues here. It is, if you're a team that makes it to finals, I think like sometimes you should just be awarded a bid if there's more than one bid. So I don't know. I understand both sides.
Yeah, there's definitely both sides to it. Because Toronto beat McGill in a crossover game that the win, like regardless if they won or lost, both teams are still making the bracket. So it wasn't like, I don't know how hard each team was going. I don't know. I wasn't there for the first day. So, anywho, you wanted to talk about Tula very briefly because they won, but it wasn't without some adversity.
Yeah, so it was definitely not them. They didn't pull like a Manitoba and just like storm through finals. They had 3 or 4 very close games, a couple universe games along the way. And you might be tempted to be like, oh, well, that doesn't mean that means that they're not as strong as maybe people think that they are if they're only beating these teams by 1 or 2. But what it says to me is that this team, when it matters, can win. Have they lost any of these like super close games like this recently? Like they might have at a different tournament, but at this tournament, the fact that they can pull out wins in 3 or 4 close games every single time is such a promising thing that the team knows how to clutch up when it matters. So I'm on the Toronto Tula hype train right now.
Yeah, I've maybe jumped off the Toronto hype train and got to jump onto the Mac hype train after seeing what they were doing. I know they did lose in the final. Toronto is missing a key member of their team in Tyama Lau, who plays on the Sixers. Was not seen cleated up. Was kind of helping guide lines and talk, but not suited up at all. So I believe something happened at regionals, but not sure if I don't know if she'll be playing at nationals. So we'll find out. But teams are getting hit by the injury bug, absences as well. So lots of things happening there. With predictions, I think it was pretty easy just because I knew the top 8 seeds kind of were a little bit above the teams lower than them. And so I got that all right. But Guelph, McGill, you made it to the semis, did not predict that. So good on you. I did pick U of T to win, and they proved me right. So that's the women's recap. And then open, some people I heard from the grapevine. Danie, we talked about this tournament format. It was a weird format, right? It's like this like play in to get to the 16, then it's the 8. Some people didn't like it, is all I'm saying. They'd rather have the pool play games. My feeling is it's great to have the pool play games, but if you're in a pool with a couple B teams and you're like Queens, is that actually really helpful to you?
If you're playing a tournament where there's lots of games, I think that it is nice to have some games where you can play your new players. I think that's kind of an advantage, but sometimes it does lull you into a false sense of security, or it does make you kind of stoop to the level of your opponent. And then if you go crossover and play against a stronger team, you're maybe not quite ready. So again, there's benefits and detriments to both.
Yeah, well, the tournament format was the way it was. So first 2 rounds go to seed, which is expected. And in the quarters, Queens, Ottawa, Waterloo, McGill all win, which were the top 4 seeds in this tournament. So good job, the person who made this tournament schedule and seeding, because you got it right. And then all the top seeds win in the backdoor bracket on day 1 as well. So we're going to move into Sunday. Like I said, I was there, semis. Queens beats Ottawa. Got to see that game. Queens went up a couple breaks and kind of rode that out for the win. Queens legitimate championship contender out here. Be very scared of Queens, the other teams listening here, like a Manitoba or UBC or Montreal or any of those. But the semi we're going to talk about is Waterloo versus McGill. I think McGill, if my memory stands corrected, had to come back and also break upwind or have to score a big upwind point. But anyways, it goes to Universe. Then a controversial play happens. Okay? It's on the stream or on the video, so you can go watch it yourself. Let me break it down for you folks. Pole goes up from Waterloo. They're pulling upwind, going defense upwind on Universe. The pole is clearly going to sail back towards their end zone. a Waterloo player decides to bat the disc while it's in the air to basically prevent it from going further back into their own space. Everyone's like perplexed, like what's going on? That's like blatant cheating.
A Waterloo person pulled it and it was going.
Waterloo pulls.
And a Waterloo person touches it.
And a Waterloo person touches it without anyone else touching it.
Okay.
And so the rule as currently constructed from what I know or what I've heard is you can either ask for a repull or you can take it from where the disc was batted. Either way, those two scenarios benefit the team that commits the infraction, because if they take it from where it was batted, it's most likely going to be further than where the disc would have ended up, right? Because it's tailing upwind towards your own space. Or you repull and have a chance to make an even better pull. So that is probably the reason why that was done. It is within the rules, sure, kind of, I guess, but wasn't a good look is all I'm saying.
Do you think that person knew what they were doing?
I don't want to speak for said person, but yeah, from people watching, it wasn't it hit me by mistake. It was like a SWAT or something, like something to take it down, basically.
Interesting.
So obviously, people on the McGill side were not happy. But anyways, the point continues. McGill has it multiple times on the end zone. They throw an ill-fated hammer. It doesn't work out going downwind, and Waterloo eventually works it up. Scott Graham pumps the disc. They get it near the end zone. Then they, dink and dunk it for the score, and they win. So, that's tough, right? If you're McGill, because you had this thing like shook you. You had it multiple times on the end zone going downwind, but Waterloo's defense holds strong. We circle into the backdoor bracket. Western gets a big W over U of T. Guelph squeaks by Carleton. I think they took a half with like 10 minutes left or like 5 minutes left. I think it ended like 6-5. That's how windy it was. Ottawa and McGill win their games against those teams and playing the game to go. But here's the thing. If McGill wins, it doesn't really matter if Waterloo were to lose, which they do, lose in the final, 11-8 to Queens. It doesn't matter to Waterloo because they've already beat them, so they get it. So Waterloo doesn't want Ottawa to win. Ottawa does win and sets up this game-to-go action. I got to watch most of the game. It was pretty exciting. Waterloo takes half and was up pretty much most of the game. Ottawa breaks back and eventually breaks to win. So I hate to say this to the Waterloo crowd, but you did, the catchphrase I stole from somebody else, but you did the lose, see ya. Danie's doing the L's and like the out. That's tough because you had a chance in the final and you could see the heartbreak on the players. I could see it because they gave their all, right? Like it's a hard day. And now they're going to have to fight through on Friday, which makes things more difficult. So tough loss there. And I got to give a couple shout outs to B teams. So McMaster B, you're the best B team on this day. Was sent a message by the Carleton B head coach. So, we'll give a little love to Carleton B. You get your first W of the season. That's like pretty cool. You avenge your loss to Guelph B at Steeltown. So that's nice. TMU, you finished 17th. So out here making things happen. Queens B gets a W over another school that's like, I guess an A team, like not a B team. So there's some things happening to the B squads. And people say, Theo, why do you give love to the B squads? Because a lot of especially look at Queens mothership, the A team, a lot of them came from Fly. So like a guy like Declan Gaynor, who played with Local 613, I was told he was grinding the gym all offseason. He was played on Fly last year. I believe he's on the Queens A O line this year. So it is possible. But a lot of news there, Danie. I'll let you share your thoughts on all that, especially the controversial play.
Because I didn't know that rule, I have a very hard time believing that the player that did this knew that rule too, and they just maybe didn't understand what they were doing, but it didn't end up having a bad consequence, really. So that's just really strange. There should be a specific place on the field you should get it. Like you should get it on the end zone line or something. Or like,
it's a rule
in
where
pool, when you scratch, you get to like put it wherever you want. Imagine. Yeah. There's a play where you can put it wherever you want.
Well, I feel like us publicizing this move is going to incentivize perhaps other teams to do this because as of right now, the rule's constructed, there is no consequence. Like I think you might get a blue card. I was told by an observer friend. you should be getting a blue card. No card was given on this occasion, but for blatantly cheating. But it's like within the rules, there is no harm to it because you either get a repull or you just get the disc where it's batted. And if it's going to go into your own end zone because it's upwind, you might as well do it. That's probably, I don't know if I'm giving teams a new strategy, but don't do it because that's breaking the rules.
Well, it's not within the rules. So
yeah,
if it's can
like,
be carded,
yeah,
it's like don't hurt people in the field, don't cheat, it's spirit and stuff. So I don't know. Anyways, those are my thoughts. I mean, that does suck for Waterloo. I assume they're probably going to do well in Div 1 or the Friday qualifiers, and hopefully you get to see them in Div 1 when they qualify.
I mean, there's a lot of teams out here that I said this before, but you got Carleton, Lurking, Guelph, you got Sherbrooke, and then you got McGill and Waterloo who finished high up in this tournament. So some of these teams are not going to make it. There's only 2 bids. And the reason why is because Dalhousie is going, according to their Instagram, they were undefeated in their play. They actually played in a mixed tournament. So there are other local teams happening, but within that, they also got to play UNB. Was told that I'm allowed to share this. Dal A Open is going D1, but Dal A Women's going to go D2. So what does that mean, Danie? It means 3 bids on Friday. Come on. Teams probably didn't expect that, but now they know.
That is really exciting. If I am somebody going in for those qualifiers and there's an extra bid on the line, that is very nice news. Now, Theo, lots of exciting stuff happened this weekend. Did it impact your rankings?
Well, first of all, it's our rankings. You have some input because well, I mean, if it was fully your rankings, UBC would number 1, everyone else would be like number 10.
UBC,
which is
UVic.
fine.
Yes, you're right.
Yeah, UBC, UVic. But before I say that, just want to pat myself on the back and say I predicted both outcomes in the Open, that Queens was going to win and then Ottawa was going to get the bid in the game to go. It was against another team, but I will say that Ottawa, I predicted you to win, and so you can expect to see yourself move up the ranking. But a team that's going to go down, I mentioned that already, UVic. Unfortunately, that result going to lower you a bit, and Guelph Women's going to be in the rankings, of course. Look how they did. Come on, I was told by, first of all, Guelph has this sweet setup. They have this like full camera rig where like someone's like controlling it from down here, and like they have a machine and they're like doing film. Like how cool is that? Guelph.
Yeah.
My alma mater, love it. So I had someone there. He was like, "So we're gonna get ranked, or we're in the semis?" And I was like, "I like this guy. He might. He's advocating for his squad, so that's good."
Huh. All right.
Should
Anything
UBC
else?
move up? They did win Westerns. That's a question.
I mean, I think they're fine where they are. All right. So those are the rankings. If you don't find yourself in the rankings now, we're going to do a whole like tournament preview. And that's your chance. If you want to slide into our DMs, tell us how wrong we are. Maybe that's where you're going to get to see it. So thank you everyone for participating in the tournaments this past weekend. It was super fun to follow along. We are going to be kind of changing pace a little bit right now. We're going to be talking about tryouts for U24. And a caveat is that I'm just one of the coaches and I might be looking for different things than the other 2 head coaches will be looking for. But I am me and I can tell you what I'm looking for. And maybe that will help you at the tryout. So first of all, I do want to shout out an episode we did a long time ago where we had Alex Lamb and Sarah Jacobson on the podcast. Sarah was very enlightening with kind of how she approached tryouts. And I think that it was very wonderful and I think really helpful for young people going into a tryout. If you're a little nervous, you should go back and give it a listen. So Theo, you have some questions for me.
Yeah. And before we even start, we did try to get the coaches. It was kind of like,
we're busy.
We tried. We were busy. They're busy. You know how it is. Yeah. So hey, we at least got 1 coach. It's better than 0. So we'll take that. Huckin Eh audience, we love that. So first of all, want to know what are you looking forward to this weekend personally? Because you get to actually come out to Ottawa, which is exciting. And then as a coach, what are you looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to working with my assist coaches kind of as a group for the first time. We've had like meetings and stuff like that. And I think we all gel really well. And I think we're on the same page, which is really exciting. And so in terms of what I'm looking forward to as a coach, there's just an energy at tryouts that is unmatched. You can like sense the nerves in the air. It's early in the morning. It's cold. People are just like anxious, putting everything out on the line. It's a very exciting thing to be in that atmosphere. And I feel very privileged to be in a position where I am able to kind of watch all of these super talented athletes try to achieve greatness. So it's a pretty cool experience.
And, some people that are going might not have ever been to tryouts. So you're not going to spill all the secrets, of course, but what can people expect? Is it going to be, just scrimmages, just drills? Like, what kind of stuff can people look forward to,
Yeah, so I think the athletes are going to get sent everything we're actually doing. There's a couple flex spaces that might adapt and things change, obviously, kind of as they go. But there's going to be a couple fitness tests at the beginning. We actually took out 3 or 4 different drills to add more scrimmage time, which everyone loves. Because we were going to be filming a lot of the tryout, it was actually made it more possible for us to be able to do more scrimmaging. Because I find when I'm watching a scrimmage, I'm very focused on like the disc and the player that is cutting for the disc. But when you film it, you can actually break it down and watch specific players as they're moving. Do they make space well? Are they anticipating well? Like, are they taking away the biggest threat? Are they helping? There's other things that you can see that you don't necessarily see when you're there live in person. So we made a lot of space for scrimmages. So day 1 is going to be all women's and opens separate. And then day 2, the first half is going to be co-ed. And then the second half is going to be women's and men's separate again. So that's kind of a little bit of like the laydown. It's going to be a long day. We do recognize that these athletes are under high volume part of their season, lots of events happening. And so we're going to make sure that we're giving lots of breaks and we're not putting too much demand because it is a long day.
Long 2 days. And I know some players, there's, a couple of names in mind. I'm not going to say who, but they're playing the Uni Series. They're going to tryouts. They're playing CUC, and then they're going to nationals. So it's like, that's a lot.
It's a lot.
That's a lot. I know Sarah talked about this, but you get to share your perspective here. Say I'm a young buck from Timbuktu. I'm trying out. How can I stand out from the crowd? And I'm not talking about just the swag. I'm talking about play.
So obviously offense is something that people think is the most important. And I think that there are obviously positions and roles on the field or on a team where offense is really important. But generally speaking, we kind of already have a lot of these top players identified before the tryout begins. They're playing on top club teams. We have footage of them. We kind of know who's out there. We're really honing in on kind of like D-line. Well, I am anyways. I can speak from the mixed teams experience where I'm going to be watching players to see what kind of like fire and intensity they bring. And if you're like throwing and your break throwing isn't elite, but you're foaming at the mouth and you are like hungry and you put so much pressure on your player that you force the other team to make mistakes, like those kinds of things, that's within your control. You have control over how much effort you put in, and those things really stand out. Because like most of your team is D-line. So go play like a D-liner, if that makes sense. Also, shake a coach's hand. Go introduce yourself. Say hi.
That's a good one. Say hi to all of them. So you're saying, is there any way to stand out swag-wise, or that doesn't matter? Like,
no, you got to wear a jersey with your last name on it. If you wear sunglasses while you're playing, I'm going to automatically think that you don't know high-level ultimate.
Oh, that's interesting because there were multiple people I saw on the weekend rocking the shades. So that's all I'm saying. Don't count them out just because they have the shades.
Okay, I'll try.
That's all I'm saying. Okay, now we're gonna walk through a moment. Someone's doing a break mark drill, whatever, and they're turfing like 3, 4, 5 throws, or they're just like having a bad drill, a couple of drops, a couple of throwaways, they get skied, whatever. How do you rebound? What do you do?
I think like the most important thing I always tell to athletes in a tryout or going into tryouts is that the coaches don't notice when you make one mistake. If you keep making that same mistake and you don't get it back, that is when we start to notice. So I think a lot of people spiral when they make a mistake and they're like, oh, they were watching, oh, they wrote something down on their clipboard. They're probably not writing anything about you. They're not going to write, oh, this person dropped it one time. Like that is not something that's going to be noted. From my perspective, of course, I'm only speaking on behalf of my perspective at this moment. So if you do make a mistake or two, coaches will notice if you can shake it off and get back into it. So I think you have an opportunity to show that you have that ability, because you're going to make mistakes on a national team. You're going to drop the disc. You're going to throw it away. You're going to get beat. It's what you do after that that is really kind of telling of what type of athlete you are. So everyone makes mistakes. No one notices. No one cares. You're going to make a bunch. Just kind of like, like I used to envision myself making a mistake, like visualize it. And then I would visualize what I would do right after. So I'd actually like mentally practice shaking it off. And I think that's really counterintuitive for a lot of people to like visualize making a mistake, but that was really helpful for me. I don't want to show it on my face. I don't want anyone to think like I want to automatically look like, oh, she wants to get it back. So those are the kinds of things you notice. We don't care. I don't care. If you drop it or you have a bad drill, you can turn it around. It's a 2-day tournament or tryout. You have lots of time.
So now, we're going to wrap this up with a couple more questions, but with the scrimmages, what's the balance between like just shooting because you want to just like show off your skills, but then being conservative? Like, how do you strike the balance of that?
I think it depends on the team. The type of players that I think our mixed team are looking for are people that, if it's for O-line, know when is the right choice. Like it's all about choices. If the person's shooting because the person has a couple steps deep, I'm happy with that. Do it all day. If the choice is bad and you're forcing things, that's definitely something that doesn't reflect well, in my opinion. So even if it's the right choice and the execution's off, that's different too. Like that's okay. Like obviously we want to see execution right up there as well, but it's not always the case. And sometimes you're a bit off and that's fine. But if you're consistently throwing hard throws to bad decisions, that is not a good look. So that's kind of what I would say. Like you can play around with both. I always try to show a little bit of both. I want to show the scrimmage. I personally will think I'm going to focus on moving the disc quickly and kind of hitting the first thing that I see. And then I'll go, okay, the scrimmage, I want to like show my deep game or whatever. Like I would make that active decision before I kind of set that goal for myself.
Tryouts are wrapped up. Let's just say the tryouts are over. What is the process like after for the players? When can they expect to kind of find out? Because I'm sure they're going to be on pins and needles waiting and they're going to be nervous.
Yeah. The unfortunate thing for especially the folks trying out in the East is that they got to wait for the West tryouts to happen. And
That's
then
true.
Because there's a women's and men's and a mixed team, or women's and open and mixed team, that all have to kind of collaborate, the roster selection and then invites takes a really long time. So honestly, it's going to be December. It's going to be a long time. So just like forget about tryouts after it happens. Go about your normal life. You're going to get an email one way or the other. It's going to be into December. Roster announcement's going to be late December. No, it's Christmas. Emails.
Okay.
Maybe.
It's like a Christmas gift.
For the rosters to be publicly announced, potentially closer to Christmas. Yeah.
So we'll get a gift here on the podcast of getting them publicly. That's good stuff. And I've never been at this level of U24, so I don't know how this works. But can someone be picked for two teams, or I guess both coaches could want them? And then how does it? I don't know if this is spilling too many secrets, but how do you decide who goes on what team if both coaches want the same person?
It's a different process this year. So I think it was laid out pretty clearly in the application form. So I think most athletes kind of understand. But say, Theo, you rolled to tryouts and you're just so good. And both John and I are like, we want Theo on our teams. Whatever you put as your preference would be the offer that you get. So if you put open as your preference, then the offer you get would be open. If you put mixed as your preference, the offer you get would be mixed, if we both wanted you. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. So applicants, people trying out, make sure you get all the coaches wanting, and then you have...
Makes it easier.
That's kind of cool. Yeah.
And you get what you want.
Danie, thank you for coming on the podcast. I feel like you're a guest right now, but we thank you for coming on the podcast, taking time out of your work schedule to spend time with us here on the Huckin Eh podcast.
My bachelorette party.
I mean, yeah, you're taking time out of your bachelorette party. So we do appreciate that. We know you got some more evening festivities to get to, but any final words of wisdom before we sign off?
Go out there and have fun. When you're having fun, you play better. Play loose, get to know the people you're on a team with, be a good teammate, win on and off the field. So there's lots of things you can be doing not on the field to show that you're a good teammate. And I'm looking for people that are good teammates.
Yeah, and I'm not a coach, but I like when players want to take the hardest matchup and like challenge themselves. I like that. So maybe that's, take it personally to win your matchup and all that. We're excited to find out who's on the team. That's all we're saying. So that's going to wrap up the show for this week. Danie's going to get to her bachelorette party. I'm going to go talk about B squads here. I'm going to talk about why every union team needs a B squad. Maybe I'll talk about why you should change it from the B team. But anyways, I'm going to talk about B squads and the subscriber only. Danie, you going to plug the socials or what?
Our Instagram be popping off. We have to do a personal poem for whoever was 2K. So Zoe, you got a personal shout out coming your way soon. But we're bumping. Follow us on Huckin Eh at Instagram. You can go huckineh@ultiworld.com. You can email us, all of those things. So we're doing great. We're going to be #3K by the end of this college season.
Yeah, well, hopefully we get there. We're at 2,100 already. Like, come on, that's fire. Ultiworld, we appreciate you tagging us in a reel a red flag because I did clip that for them. I didn't post it; they did, which is nice. And that got us a bunch of followers and a lot of comments and no travel calls is all I'm going to say. So,
do you want to know why there was no travel calls?
Oh no! I know Danie's going to say it. Say it right now. Say it for the audience. Say it for the people in the back. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. Thank you for listening. See you at Tryouts if you're going to be there. And have a great day.
Peace.